Hello, I am here. My name is Roland Dupre with East Hartford Public Library's Meet the Author, and I'm with Luis Flores, who wrote a book called Don't Judge Me. Now, Luis, a lot of people are going to ask about that title of that book. Can you talk about the title a little bit?
Yes. Well, as I was writing the story, I was laying it all out. And first, I actually came up with a synopsis before I was done writing the story. And the synopsis, right? It starts like this about then rather if CBS News called it the killing fields of America, but little do they know about the dreams those kids had. Somehow I escaped the destruction that these kids were about to get into so I could tell my side of the story that ruined so many lives forever. I myself was blinded by the powers of darkness. We had a code and believe in death before dishonor. As I mature, I realized how there's no honor 6 feet under and how you're forgotten about after a few decades behind bars, all because we live by a code that was a lie. We tend to blame the man with the power to lock us up and throw away the key, but we forget who made that choice to follow that code, which gave the man that power. As we sit in ourselves wondering, why me, why me? Remember, there's no honor in a lie. So I had committed one of the, it was, I had committed a home invasion looking for a drug dealer to get him off the block. But little did I know the law that I was breaking in the process. I thought because he was breaking the law that it was going to stay in the streets and nobody. But anyway, I ended up catching a 16-year bid behind that. And during that bid, I then had no one to turn to. My family, everybody turned their backs on me. But I knew about Jesus and I knew that he would never leave me nor forsake me, right? So, but I was afraid because I had left the church years ago and I went back to my old ways. And I was ashamed to come back. And for some reason, I needed at that time, I needed church. I needed Jesus in my life. I needed the congregation. I needed that feeling, that love, because I wasn't getting it from my family and I felt hopeless. I felt ashamed of what I did. And during the service that day, the pastor challenged us to write our stories. Our stories is a testimony, not a memoir. And not only did my story is touching, but it glorifies God because you could tell that from my very youth, God had his hands in my life and was protecting me from a lot of things. I could have been doing life in prison, but because of intervention, I believe, and I know he had his hands on me and allowed me to tell my story that glorifies him. Because at the end, I found out the hard way that we was born to, to enjoy life, but in the meaning glorify him in the process. And I learned that the hard way, but today I could sit here and talk about it and don't give any credit to luck or coincidence or nothing, but it's all God in my life. And that's what I love about this story because I read it. And when I was reading it, I didn't recognize that person. I didn't know who that person was. And it really it choked me up. I felt so sorry for that person. It had me crying. And I'm like, yeah, that was you. That used to be you. But towards the end of the way I really saw God's hand, God's love, because it was all we don't deserve grace, but yeah, He give it to us, and He saw something in me that nobody saw, and because of that, though, because of how He carried me those 13 years, and it was towards the end where I decided to write it, and I wrote it. It took me a while, but I wrote it, and it's amazing. And well, I could read a chapter or well a few paragraphs from a chapter when
Yes,
I
please.
when I first well this is before I got arrested. We was out. It was a cold night, and the only ones out was Ruben and me, along with two prostitutes. They always seemed to be around us because we supplied them with the drugs of their choice and protected them as well. On this night, they had solicited these two Mexicans walking towards the block. They asked me if they could use the hallway. And being that we haven't had a cell in a while, I'll allow them to handle their business in the hallway. About 20 minutes after, one of the chicks came out yelling, "You don't want to pay me." Ruben and I ran in the hallway to see why this guy didn't want to pay for the service he just received. We allowed this to go on in our spot because it was sort of an investment and it was time to collect. The dude was putting on his pants when we asked him, "Where's the money?" I started going in his pockets and took off his shoe. The dude said, "I got the money," and started taking off his pants. When he got down to his boxers, he started feeling around the band. And as I saw that, I thought about the time when some kid took out a razor and cut little Ed on the face. I screamed to Ruben, "He got a blade," and jumped in the air and caught the dude in the cavity of his chest. As the dude fell to the floor right after, we heard a metallic sound hitting the floor with him. Ruben and I just looked down at the blade used to cut rugs. This blade, these blades are double edged and slice rugs like butter. Had I not reacted when I did, Ruben or me would have been Swiss cheese. But see, so I talk about a lot of events that happen because the streets and drugs and violence all come together. If you don't have a structure, something structured to keep occupied at that age when we was out there hanging out. So
How old were you when you started the street life? How old were you?
I believe it all started. It escalated.
Yeah.
We grew up this book. All right, so all right, this is chapter 27. Now I'm gonna read a little bit more from the beginning, because that right there is nothing compared to Baby Park. All right. Um, so my mom's we moved around a lot, right? So one of the best parks my mom's ever moved to was this place we named Baby Park. It was in Frog Hollow neighborhood in Hartford, right? And I met a bunch of friends that we actually made a big impact on each other. And so we all most of us were in the Boy Scouts and stuff like that. All right. So, okay, summer was almost over, and I was dreading going back to school, a new school at that. Why did we always have to move? I didn't know or understand. I was 10 years old and about to start the fifth grade. I kept to myself because of the language barriers I had to cross coming to this country from Puerto Rico. And every year was a different school. It always took me 6 months to even talk to anybody, and because of that, I was held back in the first grade. I remember something I wished about when I first came to this country, and that was that I was born, why I wasn't born white, because I thought that all white people were rich and did not have the financial problems we had. I wanted a better life, and that made me a dreamer. I had dreamed up my whole future, and that helped me cope with reality. Reality was that I was the second oldest of four kids of a single parent with a fifth grade education and on welfare. I remember times when we went to sleep hungry. Our clothes for the first day of school came from Goodwill, but for that I was grateful because it was our own. And growing up poor, I had very little. Right, the first day of school came around real quick, and one thing I was grateful for was for the new location where we were living. Okay, so around here I met this little group called themselves the BST Boys after the name of the street they lived on, where the Johnsons, the Holtz, the Boo, and Carlos. Right, Babcock Street was my home away from home. This is when the little group BST Boys we all met. We was all in fifth grade, right? We had dreams. We all dreamed about becoming NFL players or hockey players. We were always into sports, or if not, if we wasn't playing sports, we were shoe shining at the state capitol or selling papers at the Hartford Hospital. Well, we was always doing something productive. In the first 5 chapters, or I think about first 10 chapters, is about growing up in Hartford, the Boy Scouts camping at Elizabeth Park, winning camporees and all that, training to become Eagle Scouts. And
Wow.
through the whole ordeal, so things changed. Something happened in the Scouts that changed my life forever, which I did, which is in here, and that I think drew me closer to the streets. I wouldn't allow, um, if I didn't know you from my past or from my parents, I wouldn't allow too many adults in my life because of what happened in the Scout. And but before that though, we all and because when I say we, because a lot of these kids, a lot of my characters mostly are all dead or doing 13 life sentences and stuff like that. So I know that I'm here by the grace of God. I wanted to read one more uh, about my brush with my shadow. We we used to help this guy clean banks around Hartford and stuff like that. He used to pick us up, and for a sandwich, he was 11 years old. We didn't mind. One day, I had a I had to meet them at the bank, and it started getting dark, and I had to go under underpath over some railroad tracks behind the Hartford Current in Hartford,
Mhm.
and yeah, so the light shift, and I noticed a shadow in front of me, and I started running, and I ran, and I thought my life was gonna end because I thought it was somebody actually behind me. And we used to hear stories about the railroad tracks night and at 11. So I ran all the way up the hill to Farmington Avenue. When I turned around, the shadow was still there, but there was nobody. And I turned back around, I noticed it was my own shadow. I was
Oh,
running from my own shadow. So yes, those things that make you the, the story will make you laugh, will make you, yeah, but well also it's inspiring because through the whole deal I was always crying out like why me, why this, because I never ever thought that we had made a pact when we was younger because my friend's parents went through a drug addiction, and he made me promise them that we will never use drugs. And because of my mom's had to go to prison when I was in my teens, and I was left to fend for myself. I was I don't want to say peer pressure, but yeah, though the drug I that's when the drug scene came into play, and so it was all through it's through different courses of my life. So the book hopefully will inspire kids. They'll decide they think that the streets or gangs or drugs are a joke or not. Yes, I had to do 13 years because of my reckless behavior, but through the grace and mercy of God, I'm still alive to talk about it and yet don't know that there is a God.
and
And that,
can you tell a little bit about how you came to that idea of God in your life and what God is doing in your life?
okay, it wasn't, um, there was a time in my life where well, as a teenager, I thought I knew it all. And so the Bible was written by a man. That's what I thought. And that ain't come from God. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Until I found myself locked up because of drinking. I ended up going to jail and I ended up out of service. And I was bawling, crying because I was just 16. And somebody gave me a prayer book and I started praying the prayer book, and I felt this comfort, and the pain that I felt in my chest from being locked up, being away, went away. I felt a comfort, and I never told nobody, but I went back, started living my life, and it wasn't until years after I remember that comfort. Where now I'm in South Carolina, and I try to leave. I try to leave Hartford because I thought that if I changed my geological position, that things would be different. No, things were now now instead of selling to supply my habit, I had to work and spend on hard-earned money. That's when I realized I had a problem, but I was too scared to ask for help. I was afraid until I ran the course. I hit rock bottom and I didn't know what to do. I picked up the phone and I called the cops and I asked them. So first I was on probation in South Carolina because I had got caught with drugs. And I called them up and I told them that I was using and I was on probation and I needed to get locked up. Instead of them locking me up, they took me to this place called the Greenville Rescue Mission. And ever since that day, though, to tell you the truth, I had a real encounter, and my life was never the same ever since that day. But it
Wow.
was because of that officer. Um,
Wow.
yes,
That's impressive. And do you feel like you belong to our world now? Do you feel like you're more centered and belonging?
yes, I have a peace. I have a love for others. I have a joy that's way beyond understanding. But I know what it is, and I can't never stop praying, reading my Bible, and congregating with other believers because I tried to do the first two and that didn't work out. And I stay and my life has been a blessing to those around me. It's like but I look back though and I thank God for a lot of my afflictions because if it wasn't for my affliction, even though um when I was in my teens I was ignorant to a lot of things, but that draw me closer because I wanted answers. I had questions. Why me? Why this? I'm like, we had dreams, we had goals. At one time, I was um all American in sports in high school. I was like the fastest in the city in track, and I had a great future. But somehow though I didn't have the right guidance, and I was led by myself, which it was like the blind leading the blind because I didn't have no clue on what I was doing. I didn't know the chemical imbalance that I did to myself. I didn't know the long term effects. I didn't know that I almost lost my life a few times because of my reckless behavior.
And this is an kind of a mission you're on to spread that joy that you found then.
Yes, yes, that's why I'm not ashamed to the stuff that I wrote about because at the end of the day, it talks about a loving creator that's really got your back. And if he did it for me, he'll do it for anybody. Because at one time I used to consider myself the scum of the earth. I was a scum. So I told somebody that I was damaged goods, and they were like, "Nah, you just made a lot of wrong choices." So, because of my wrong choices, though I am here today. But at that time I was hard on myself. I always been hard on myself. But I gotta forgive. I've forgiven myself.
That's probably the hardest thing to do is to forgive yourself. It's easier to forgive everybody else except for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so good to talk to you. I'm so glad that you've opened up and shared your story. This is wonderful. Thank you so much, Luis.
Thank
Luis,
you. Thank
can
you for
you,
having me.
yeah, can you hold up your book again? The
Yes, yes,
cover of your
yes,
book, because it's
yes.
got a great drawing. It's
Yes.
Don't Judge Me.
Don't judge me. It's on
And
Amazon, Google, Barnes and Nobles.
yeah,
It's like Christian Faith Publishing Company, great publishing company, helped me out a lot. We really brought this story to life. It
that's wonderful.
really well. I went to chapter 27 because that's a little bit of meat, but it got some. I went to wilderness school too, and we were cadets, we were in the scouts, we used to hang out with legislators and stuff like that. We had a lot of us had a lot of promise, but because some choices one wrong choice,
Can divert you for a long time. It took
yes,
your life into a whole other direction, didn't it? You
yes,
know, but growing up in Hartford is a whole other world. It's a environment that was very challenging to everybody involved. And that was in the 80s.
that was in the 80s, yes,
Yeah.
late 70s,
Yeah.
yes, yes, because late 70s, 80s.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording and we'll chat a little bit later more.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you, thank you. Good meeting you.